All right. So technically speaking, we are hot. Give me one more sound check.
Check, 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 check. Microphone checker.
Hello, hello.
Check, 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 check.
He's low.
He is a touch. Just a touch.
Should I get closer to the mic? Is that
that works.
better?
That works better.
Get comfortable and then we'll adjust the thing to you.
Hold on. Let me make sure that's him. Talk for me, Dylan.
Okay. Check, 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 check.
There we go. That was you. Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody good? Let's light this candle.
Do it.
Hello, everyone. This is a super special edition of Shiftless.
Location, guests, everything.
Everything. Weather.
Man, we'll get into the weather.
Random random parts removed from wildlife.
Well,
Dylan, we showed up and it looked like crab claws,
feet.
but it was armadillo legs that were still attached at the shoulder.
Sitting on the bench right here.
Welcome to Texas.
All right. So first off, Brad, I'll let you introduce this.
Yeah. DJ Caleb in the house.
Oh wait a minute. We got to do the routine here. Wait a minute.
So
I need
good.
my applause. I don't feel very important.
There we go.
Yay!
And I'm going to be selfish and introduce the other DJ. just for shits and giggles, because this. Hey, we've had Guitar Ted on. That was pretty special.
That was pretty cool.
That was pretty special. But this one's pretty good too. First off, I have to wonder: is this the busiest man in cycling?
Certainly seems like it.
Seems like it. I mean, what? YouTube personality, possibly multiple personalities. Coach, owner of a coaching company,
Consummate product reviewer.
but a very heavy-duty proponent of the scientific method, which I appreciate tremendously. Mm-hmm. Also, what I appreciate tremendously, a very high-level pot stirrer.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
Via a very entertaining podcast, which I think that's pretty damn cool. With your friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are your buds.
Yeah.
Excellent. And I'm sure I missed something, but this really takes it next level.
Fast guy, too.
Professional racer in the Life Time Grand Prix, Mr.
Ooh.
Dylan Johnson. How about it? Can we do it? There we go. All right.
Glad you're so graceful with all that.
Yeah.
We appreciate you.
Yeah.
That was a great introduction. I think you hit everything there.
Is there anything you would like to add to your CV for that?
That was perfect. Perfect.
You're a watercolor guy, you know?
I'm about to say, what spare time do you have, and what do you do in that spare time?
I mean, I don't have a lot of spare time, and I guess the spare time that I have, I like to just chill and not do a lot of extra stuff. So
that makes all the sense. So sincerely appreciative for us getting a piece of your time, and you are in town getting ready for Unbound, definitely, potentially Gravel Locos.
Yeah, I mean, we can start by talking about that if you want.
Whatever works for you, Ming.
All right. Yeah, I'm in Texas for Gravel Locos, but I'm also in Texas to heat acclimate for Unbound, because I think that heat acclimation for Unbound is probably as important as altitude acclimation for Leadville. Obviously, it depends on how hot it's going to be. It could rain, and then it doesn't matter at all. But
Sure.
if it's a hot year, the heat acclimation is super important for Unbound.
Agree.
And Texas is a perfect place to heat acclimate.
Yeah.
That being said, on the drive out here to Texas, I actually started getting a sore throat. Went to the urgent care 2 days ago, and turns out I have strep throat. So I don't know if Gravel Locos is going to happen. I'm on antibiotics now. It's really not very optimal prep for Unbound either, because being on antibiotics usually screws with people's performance and makes them feel tired on the bike. But we'll see what happens.
How many days is your antibiotic supposed to run?
10 days.
10 day, full 10 day.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah,
So
it's
is it a
hard on the
Z-pack?
stomach.
What's that?
Z-Pack?
I don't know. It's amoxicillin.
Yeah.
I'm not
yeah.
an antibiotics expert.
Yeah.
That
surprises me.
amoxicillin's hard on your stomach too.
Yeah.
That's maybe tough for
Ooh, and
taking in calories on the race.
And we'll be talking about that, because you're a big proponent of the carbs per hour.
Yeah.
That's a turning into quite the big deal at the highest level. Is it universal at the highest levels right now?
I would say so. I think that if you're a serious elite racer, you're on the carbs per hour train at this point.
Okay.
I mean, that's a fairly new development. I would say even 5 years ago, people weren't quite doing it.
That's what I'm getting at. That one came on fast.
Yeah, I've heard that in a lot of circles.
Yeah.
So
how about you? Did you ever get to try out your new foods that you were worried it was going to make you shit your pants?
No, I'd rather just shit my pants on course.
Well, Caleb's hitting Unbound XL this year.
So how do you prefer to fuel? Because we've had multiple discussions about fueling, and how has your fueling changed since you've come onto the carbs per hour thing?
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, I would say that the biggest change is that I don't do solid foods at all anymore. No solid foods.
It didn't depend. It did even in a 12-hour window. Like if you're going to be turning yourself inside out for 12 hours, you're still just liquid.
Well, I mean, the most solid it gets is gels, which I don't know. Some people consider that solid food. Some people don't.
Do you have any 12 hours in your routine currently?
Hopefully, Unbound is less than 12 hours.
Sure.
So no.
Yeah, I'm just because. With me personally, and that's the thing, is fueling is super personal. I mean, everybody, what works for you doesn't work for me. And, I've just found like when I get in that 4 to 6 hour window and beyond, I need something solid. Like, whether it's just a sandwich and also just to break up, do you oscillate between sweet and savory? Do you have any savory drinks that you do? Are they unflavored, or what are you fueling with?
Yeah. What is your carb of choice these days?
So I use flow formulas in my bottles, and then for gels I'm using a mix of Morton, Never Second, SIS.
Yeah.
A lot of those isotonic gels.
Yeah. I love the salted SISs.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I like to go as flavorless as possible, so I use the flavorless flow formulas.
Yeah.
I prefer flavorless gels, like the Morton gels are flavorless. It's not like they don't taste like anything, they just taste sweet.
Yeah.
But to me, minimizing flavor means that I can actually eat it 8 hours into Unbound, as opposed to just being so sick of lemon lime.
Yeah. As a chef, that sounds boring AF, though.
Yeah, I mean, it can be, but fueling on the bike is not about
enjoyment.
It's not about enjoyment. It's literally fuel for your body.
It's fuel. So, and sponsor plugs are definitely allowed. And forgive my idiocy. I see the feed on so many racers these days. Is the feed a sponsor that feeds into your calories here? Can you explain how they work into this situation?
Yeah, absolutely. The feed provides all my nutrition, and they're an amazing sponsor to have, because as a when you're working with a company, obviously you have to use whatever that company makes, but with the feed, I mean, they sell everything.
Yeah.
So you can try out everything and find out what works for you. And you can talk about this worked for me, this didn't work for me. I feel like you can be more genuine about what nutrition works for you and what nutrition doesn't work for you. So, like when I talk about no solid foods, using flow formulas in my bottles, using these particular brands of gels, that's what works for me. And even though they're different brands, I can talk about all of them.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's very cool. That's very cool, because I can vouch. Dylan is not afraid to besmirch the products that he's not a fan. I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but as much as we've talked about stages lately, Dylan's the one that actually put them out of business. I mean, the timing on that, you guys recorded that like the day of the announcement or the day before the announcement?
I think we recorded it 2 days before the announcement, and then the episode came out the day after the announcement. Yeah,
but Dylan's not a Stages fan.
Yeah, I noticed there was a cork on his bike.
We'll definitely be getting there. We'll be getting there.
So many interesting things on that bike.
Yeah,
we could probably do a whole episode just on the bike, don't you think?
Yeah.
And I mean that's all right. I'll admit, I'm a Dylan fanboy. I kind of feel like a 5th grade girl in 2011 going to her first Justin Bieber concert. Right? It's just like I want to.
You've got those dates down perfect, though. It would have been about the right time.
I would have lost that bet because I thought Caleb was going to fangirl out the hardest.
I mean, I'm on drugs too, so
he's playing it cool.
I woke up with a migraine this morning, so I'm a little half tilted. I do want to ask a question though on the the nutrition stuff, one of the problems that I have is I can go out and start a ride and I can pretty much eat whatever I have with me. But if I'm doing hard efforts and I get out there after about 4 or 5 hours, I can't force myself to eat sweet stuff. Like I have no appetite for it. So I tend to kind of ebb and flow from sweet to savory. Like I'll stop eating anything sweet and go into, hell, if it's potato chips and peanuts or whatever, that's fine. You don't have that problem. You don't ever get tired of eating that thing. I guess it's just not in your DNA to care, I guess.
I would guess that you're not taking enough salt in the beginning.
Is that it? Is that an indicator maybe?
That's what I would think.
It could be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say that if you're really craving sodium, then you probably didn't eat enough sodium early in the ride or early in the race.
It's crazy. I mean, let's don't get into age thing, but my blood work yearly does indicate a high level of salt intake, and my doctor tends to say, hey, be a little careful. He understands that I'm doing things that are a little abnormal or whatever, but my wife comes in and I'm scrambling eggs in the morning. She's like, hey, don't put too much salt in those eggs. I'm like, no, but you don't understand. Like, I'm literally salivating for that salt. And this guy even got me into in the summer, if he doesn't want to put calories in his bottle, he'll sprinkle sea salt, a little bit of sea salt in his
and clementine juice. Yeah.
Well, this is what I'll say about getting in a high amount of carbs while you're racing, is that you can't just show up on race day having not consumed a high amount of carbs in training and expect to consume a high amount of carbs.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a little extra chamois butter going on.
So that's a good segue, because I wrote down a note. I want to talk about the heat acclimation and how it kind of ties in with this. I'm glad. Welcome to Texas to do that. I've lived here my entire life, and I'm getting to a point now where I think genetics plays a role in how acclimated you can get. Going out, and we will go out at times. It's not smart, but we will go out, and it's maybe 105 degrees. He has a night race that he puts on that last year we had to push it back an hour because it was so hot, and we still started, and it was 103? It
was 107.
107?
Wow. Yeah.
So, and about a year and a half ago, myself and another friend went to one of his races kind of a little further south from here, and we had been working for several months heat acclimating, and Sean McAfee and I both had heat issues. So what's your, and even in those races, so going back to the sodium intake, I was drinking Pedialyte, things that had a lot of electrolytes, a lot of sodium, trying to prepare for that, and it didn't matter the amount of prep. I was still having issues with that heat. What do you know about that, or do you have any insight on, like, is there science behind any kind of threshold on someone's genetics on how far they can heat acclimate?
I would, I haven't done enough research into particularly heat acclimation, but knowing what I know about altitude acclimation, I would venture to say that yes, genetics plays a pretty big role, because genetics does play a huge role in altitude acclimation. And there's some people that just don't really acclimate to altitude, and it's nothing that they can do about it. It's just really their genetics. And then there's other people that they don't need 2 weeks to acclimate. They get to altitude and they're acclimated within a few days. There is a huge range of potential for acclimation to altitude, and a lot of the physiological changes that your body makes when it's altitude acclimating are the same changes that it makes when it's heat acclimating. So I would assume that genetics plays a big role in
What's
that.
your window for acclimation? Like, what do you find works best? Because we have a friend that went up and did a ride, and he got there several days earlier, and he said, someone told me that if you don't get there 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time, you might as well just show up on race day, and you'll probably do better on race day than if you had gone there and gotten a day or two beforehand.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different theories about it. Are we talking specifically about altitude right now?
I guess we're going back to altitude.
Let's make it altitude and keep it somewhat fact-based to some extent.
Sure. Yeah. So I've done a ton of research on altitude acclimation. I think I did a video on it. I think that the issue is that how people respond to altitude is so personal to them that you can't make a blanket statement, this works for everyone. So I hear a lot of people throw out that, you need 2 or 3 weeks, and if you can't get 2 or 3 weeks, you might as well just show up the day before.
I've heard that.
That's a pretty common rule. If you actually look at the research, I don't know that actually is supported by the research. There is some research. I've seen studies that suggest that 4 days at altitude was better than 1 day at altitude, which completely goes against what I just said.
Yeah.
And then there's research that suggests the opposite. The research is kind of all over the place, and I think that the reason why it is because
genetics are all over the place.
Genetics are all over the place.
Yeah,
Like
probably some guy showed up on race day and did fine and goes, that's all you need, one day.
Sure.
And he told all his friends, and then they tried it, and it worked
And he's
for
probably
some.
just a genetic freak.
Yeah,
But
true.
What about, so hydration is a big thing with acclimation altitude, but what about, do you dabble with resveratrol at all, like beet powder or even just resveratrol, period?
No, not too much. When I go to altitude, I make the things that I mainly make sure that I'm doing is increasing the amount of liquid that I'm drinking, and
Sure.
I'll also pay attention to my iron levels and probably try to take in more iron than I normally would.
Okay.
As a supplement. Okay.
Okay.
Now, kind of along those lines, but maybe we're definitely, high likelihood we're getting into the realm of anecdotal stuff. Leadville's a good example, and there's some other Colorado national level bucket list events that Texas and Florida people actually typically seem to do pretty well in. Obviously, there's no altitude in Texas or Florida, either one. Does heat acclimation itself have any connection to the body stresses for altitude?
It does, yeah. So mainly, I mean, when you're heat acclimating and when you're altitude acclimating, you're going to have increased blood volume, increased plasma volume, and that is, so if you're heat acclimate, if you don't have the ability to altitude acclimate at all for Leadville, the next best thing you can do is heat acclimate. It's not going to be the same as if you altitude acclimated, but it's going to be better than nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've talked about this before. I've got a bunch of buddies that ride at a pretty high level down in Houston, which is dead flat, but the humidity is super high. And so that they do two things that we don't do here is they basically ride long intervals because they're just riding flat, right? They don't get any rest periods. They're just on.
Yep.
And they ride in the brutal heat as well as extremely high humid weather. And so when we go to like Arkansas, these guys are flatlanders and they kick our ass in the mountains.
Yeah.
So I've talked about it before, but there's got to be some correlation there from training in high humidity and that, like, I know it's not essentially a long interval, but it's seemingly, if you looked at the data, it's essentially a long interval. And so I think there's got to be something to that training style, and conditioning in those elements. So that's just anecdotal, but it seems to ring true for those guys. I mean, Greg's been state champion like 3 years or 4 years in a row.
Yep. No altitude, no...
And you picked the location, Kevin. We're going to get all of this shit. This isn't my backyard.
That's fine. I'm not complaining. Hey, I know how to edit this shit.
Can you edit that out, though?
We just chop in front of it and let's put it together.
And
cut.
We're back.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
God bless America.
No,
it's that guy.
this is what the audience wants. They want the raw content.
Yeah.
We don't on the Bonk Bros content, the Bonk Bros podcast. We don't cut anything out.
Yeah.
Nothing at all.
Yeah.
Kevin likes to cut all my funny sayings out.
Yeah. See,
He edits me.
Just the ones that are going to get us canceled.
I was about to say, no, it's called cancel edit is what
I'm
it's
not
called.
worried about fucking getting canceled. Come at me.
Is this your first time in Texas to do heat acclimation? Is that...
No, I've done
Okay.
heat acclimation in Texas for the last 2 years for
Really?
Unbound. Yeah.
Yeah.
In what area? In the Fort Worth area?
No, I went down to Austin area,
okay.
Lockhart.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
There's
a great area.
Some good gravel there,
Okay.
so
Oh, yeah.
it was really easy to ride miles and miles of gravel every single day in
Yeah.
the brutal heat. So
Yeah.
We used to do one of our bigger events out of Lockhart. Colin pointed us that way. They've lost a lot of that gravel, but it sounds like there's still some there. That's good to hear. My wife's telling me we need to go down there and find some more routes, make sure. Now, you brought up Bonk Bros, so if it's okay with these chuckleheads, let's roll into that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as the Dylan Johnson repertoire, that's a little bit newer for me. I've only started listening to that in like the last couple months.
Okay.
Pretty damned entertaining, though.
Yeah. I have a couple of different podcasts that I've added, and somehow, magically, your podcast just started auto-playing on my Spotify. I didn't know it existed. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, I can listen to this. So it got just added to my list of stuff I listen to. So,
Can you walk us through a quick snapshot of your buds and who's involved with Bonk Bros and how y'all got related and all that?
Sure, yeah. So Bonk Bros, for those who don't know what Bonk Bros is, it's a podcast that I do with, some of my cycling buddies, and it's quite a bit different than my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel, for those who watch it, is very science-based. I do a lot of research. I do a lot of prep. There's a script. Bonk Bros is the opposite of that. There's no research, no prep, no script, and it's mainly just 4 to 5 dudes, riffing off of each other for an hour and a half.
yeah.
Talking about cycling, but we're not. We don't prep for that podcast at all. We don't even sit down for 15 minutes and talk about what we're going to talk about. So.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we totally understand exactly what you're talking about.
Who'd have thunk it, Yeah. So what, Drew?
Yeah, so I'm a co-owner of Ignition Coach Co. Drew is the other co-owner, Drew Dillman. He's also got a YouTube channel, also a very fast racer. Tried to make it into the Life Time Grand Prix this year.
He should be in the Lifetime Grand Prix.
Oh, I know. didn't quite make the cut, but I would imagine that he is right on that line. And his goal for next year is to make it in. He's doing a lot of the Grand Prix races this year. There's also
he's just got to get that VO2 max up just a touch.
right. Yeah.
What are the requirements to getting into the Grand Prix? I don't know.
They don't have explicit requirements, which maybe makes it a little bit frustrating for some people because there's definitely some subjectivity to it's not like if you have this many points or something, you're going to make it in. It's right. I guess there's a board and they pick who they want to pick. Now, I will say that this past year, it does seem like they picked fast people, and there was a cutoff last year of, for example, on the men's side, above 23rd place made it back in, below 23rd place did not make it back in.
For what race, or you mean overall?
Overall.
Just overall in the series. Okay. So it seems like they're trying to be objective about it, but there's obviously going to be some subjectivity to it when there's like a board of people deciding who gets in and who doesn't get in.
Sure. Yeah. I wonder what that voting committee looks like.
Yeah.
I thought it was strange when I applied for Excel. They wanted my social media handles. Yeah.
Yeah. Why?
I know.
Yeah.
I thought, that's okay.
Interesting.
I understand what's going on here, for sure.
Yeah.
Since Lifetime's become involved, the selection around the lottery and what's become the Grand Prix Series and XL, they're allowed a little subjectivity to help them maximize their.
It's a bit. At the end of the day, it's still a business.
Exactly.
But that's nothing new. I mean, those whisperings have been going on ever since Lifetime got involved.
Yeah.
It was always, well, is the lottery really a lottery, or does it matter if you're a Lifetime member?
First year of the lottery, you know what the best way to guarantee to get put in was?
If you were a Lifetime Gym member.
Actually, there was even better way than that.
What's that?
The first year they did the lottery, back in Old Man Kevin's Spirit of Gravel days, that really pissed me off because I knew the subjectivity was there. So that's when I set up the first Can't Do Kansas.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, you guys take your week off. If you don't make Dirty Kansas, we'll do an event down in Texas same weekend for 200 miles. Sign up. You don't have to pay anything. Sign up for Can't Do Kansas. You know you're going to have 200 miles to do that same weekend.
Yeah.
Everybody that signed up for that made it into Dirty Kansas Lifetime.
Oh, really?
Wow. Yeah, so we were talking about the Bonk Bros members. So there's also Adam Sabin does all the editing for the podcast. He does everything, to be honest with you. If without him, the podcast would not happen. So,
and apologies on my end. Outside of Bonk Bros, I'm not familiar with Adam.
Yeah, he's also a racer. He usually does the pro race. I wouldn't call him a professional bike racer. I don't think he would call himself that. He's a very fast racer, but not quite making it in the professional ranks. And I think at this point he's got a family and he's kind of stepping back a little bit from bike racing, or at least trying to bike race at a high level.
That'll happen when you have children.
Yeah, I can imagine. And he's also a coach at Ignition.
Also a coach at Ignition.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And then there's Scott McGill, very high-level road racer.
I recognize that name.
Yeah,
definitely.
Races for Project Echelon. very good sprinter, has won a couple sprint stages of some European races that I can't remember off the top of my head. I think he won a stage of Gila this year. So
Okay.
very high level road racer.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
He won the climbing stage, right, or something?
No, he won the crit. He won the crit. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he's also the personality. Like he doesn't give a fuck. He'll say it like it is, and he's usually a man of few words too, which is an interesting person to have on a podcast.
So when he speaks, it means something. Then is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So, and then there's Tyler Cloutier. Used to be a high-level cyclocross racer. Kind of retired from cyclocross now.
He's from down here, isn't he? Or
he lives in Bentonville, Arkansas.
did he? He's. I know I have mispronounced that name in announcements. I always called him Tyler Cloutier. So it's Cloutier. Cloutier.
Hopefully, I pronounced it correctly.
No, I'm just saying. I definitely recognize that name, and I recognize that name rolling off my tongue.
I'm sure he has raced down here because I mean he's up in Arkansas, so that's not that far from here.
Right.
Yeah.
And half of Texas has moved to Arkansas, and the other half has moved to Colorado. So
If you have that last name and you live in South Louisiana, it's Cloutier.
Cloutier.
Yeah, so there's.
Okay. I'm
going to call it that.
very well could be. All right, and what I just picked up on actually this weekend, so I'm going to do a plug on your behalf as well. I've been listening to Bonk Bros for a couple months now at least. I didn't realize you guys had a Patreon to support it. So go to Patreon, look up Bonk Bros. If you're having fun with it, throw them some money, and definitely help out Dylan and his buddies. And it sounds like indirectly it all helps out Ignition coaching as well. Is Tyler involved in Ignition as well?
Yeah, actually, so every single one of the podcast members is also an Ignition coach. So we don't talk about coaching on the podcast, but if you like the personality of anyone on the podcast and you're interested in, working with them as a coach, you can hire any one of them as a coach.
Okay, except you.
Except me. Yeah. And probably Drew too. I think Drew is.
Is Drew filling up?
Yeah.
Okay, makes all the sense in the world.
That leads me into how do you find time to coach while you're, obviously you got slow seasons, you take on maybe more. Are you even coaching now?
AI, bro. AI.
That's
AI,
true.
AI
I know what's going on. Yeah.
Chat GPT.
This is actually not even me in the flesh right now. This is an AI hologram that I sent to you guys.
So did the AI really get strep throat, or is that just some kind of evil mind games he's playing with competitors?
It's spyware.
Told
it
you.
is. Someone hacked the system.
Yeah.
Clicked on the wrong link, bro.
Yeah, so these days I only coach 2 people, and they're just friends of mine. I'll be honest, like I think ideally I would coach 0 people right now because I got so much on my plate.
Yeah.
Between the podcast and the YouTube and the racing and the training, I don't need to coach right now. But I still like being involved in coaching, and obviously, working with coaches with Ignition is pretty fulfilling. So, and I think obviously when I retire from trying to ride a bike fast and compete, I'll probably go into coaching, more heavily at that point.
Yeah.
How old are you now, Dylan?
29.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have a degree in kinesiology, correct?
Exercise science. Yeah.
Is that different?
It's very similar.
Yeah,
it's very similar. So I used to work for CTS, and I would say that when I first graduated from college, coaching was my full-time job. I was racing seriously, but I wasn't making enough money at it that I would, I wouldn't even consider myself a professional.
Right.
Because my sponsors were giving me free products, but free products don't pay your bills.
Right.
Yeah.
My son's big into spike ball. Do you know what spike ball is?
A little bit.
They call it round net. It looks like, and he goes and plays pickup games with these guys, and he's like, this guy's a professional. And I go, but does he make a living doing it, or is he just sponsored? He goes, oh no, he has a job and stuff. And I go, then he's not a fucking professional. And Gage struggled to understand that concept. I go, maybe he gets shirts and free spike balls and stuff.
Yeah.
I said, but he's not paying his bills playing spike ball.
Right.
Like, what do these tournaments pay? And he's like, oh, you can win like $600. And I'm like, yeah, he's not a pro. There's a very distinct designation there. So I get it.
You said, when you got out, you weren't quite professional. Was that always a goal, or did you come to a point in your early career, to decide I want to go that direction, or I want to stay as a coach, or did it kind of just happen, or what? How did you get to the point where you are now, as far as the way life works?
Yeah, being a professional bike racer was probably my number one dream since I was 14 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, I wanted to be I wanted to be professional. Like as you said, pay my bills doing
what you love.
Doing bike racing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a long time where I thought that would just never happen. When I was 22, 23, maybe even 24, I was trying to cut it as a professional, and I had sponsors, but it was more so they were just giving me free bikes, free product. Maybe every now and then they pay for travel expenses to races.
Yeah.
I remember the first summer that I graduated college, I was doing the NUE series, and I was making very little money from CTS, and I would go to an NUE race, and at the time it was $600 to $1,000 for the win.
Yeah.
And I was like, I better win this race because that's my rent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nui, so you come from the endurance mountain bike background, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Still a mountain biker? Still riding mountain bikes in North Carolina?
Look at the tires on that thing. What the hell do you think?
I want to talk. I want to get so deep in that bike.
We're going to do a whole second half of the show just on the bike.
I feel like a caged tiger right now because I'm not. We haven't started talking about the bike yet.
Yeah.
We'll get there. I promise. So Nui endurance mountain bike racer.
I'm still very much a mountain biker. I live right outside of the Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina.
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's the best riding on the East Coast in my opinion. I'm biased because I live there, but I don't think I'd live anywhere else on the East Coast.
You know Rich Dillon?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a card, huh?
Oh yeah.
I raced with him. So do they still put on ORAM?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that in 06 and 07.
I was about to say, he's going to show his age.
I'm old as shit.
Yeah.
But I did it in 06. I did it with a roll-off hub. Bad idea.
Yeah.
And it took me like 10 hours, and then I trained like crazy and went back the next year and did it single speed. And it was good for me. I finished right at 8 hours, and I was pretty happy with that. But I know that there's guys that are turning it out in like 5 hours and shit now. So.
Oh, I think the course record might be sub 4.
God,
Jesus! I quit. I'm done. I'll see you guys later.
What's the elevation on that course now? Did they still go over Mount Mitchell twice?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think they made a few changes to the course. I think it's well over 10,000 feet for.
It was 13 the year I did it.
Yeah, I want to say it's 13 for a 100K race.
Yeah,
is insane.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. Wow, sub 4. Fuck me.
So, aside from Life Time Grand Prix, are you still doing any mountain bike racing, or just what fits into the series right now?
Yeah, so the 3 mountain bike races in the Grand Prix, and I should probably put mountain bike in quotes because I think it's arguable whether Leadville and Schwamigan is really a mountain bike race. But
there's a lot to be said there.
There's Leadville, Schwamigan, Sea Otter. Just did Sea Otter on a normal mountain bike with normal mountain bike bars.
Yeah.
That's probably the most mountain bikey I'll get this year.
So just for one more plug here, Felt is your gravel, air quotes, bike. Who's your mountain bike?
Allied. So nice. Felt is my bike sponsor. The problem is that they don't make a mountain bike. So
they don't make mountain bikes anymore?
They used to, but they stopped making them.
Oh, yeah. I did not know that. Huh.
Yeah.
That's curious.
So that means that us on the Felt United team, we can ride whatever mountain bike that we want. And Allied was willing to set me up, and I've been super impressed with the BC40.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with it. It came out super lightweight too. I think 22.5 pounds for full suspension with dropper, pedals, bottle cages. So
yeah, they make some dope ass bikes for real.
Yeah.
And just for reference sake, we are at Mad Duck Cyclery in Grapevine. If you need to pick up an Allied BC40, this is a place you can come. Clarence, there's your plug. Thanks for sharing your place with us.
Hey, so before we get too far from Sea Otter, what tires did you run there?
Yeah, so I ended up doing, I had Schwalbe Thunderbirds on, which I consider a gravel tire at this point, but I I just was not getting enough traction on the sandy corners at Sea Otter, so I went with the knobbier version, the Racing Ralph.
Yeah.
In the 2.35, and I was pretty happy with that decision.
Yeah.
Ended up running super low pressure too. I think 15 psi in the front, 16 psi in the rear.
No problem with sidewall roll or anything like that?
No, I was fine.
I mean, you're a pretty light guy too. So, I mean, if 15 psi for me would be a different animal than 15 psi for you.
Sure, it's all relative.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about the bike? Because I'm just itching.
I can't.
I mean, do we really care about him at all at this point? You know?
All right.
Okay. All right.
all
Before we move on to the bike, we have to ask a very important question. What's the best sandwich?
The best sandwich.
Yeah. What's the best sandwich?
That is a good question.
Is this a question that you ask all your guests?
No, not at all. You're the
No?
first person.
Oh wow.
We're debuting it with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
For reference sake, Brad is a chef, a very damn fine chef, as a matter of fact. But if you ever make it back our way, we'll get him to whip up a vegan sandwich for you.
Yeah.
You're vegified, right?
God, no, I'm not.
I didn't
not
say
a vegan.
I didn't say he was vegan. I said you're vegified.
We have an internal joke. No. I've experimented.
You're not a vegan either, are you?
I am a vegan.
Are you
Are you
vegan?
really?
How long
That's
have you been
amazing. That
Yeah.
like I love this already. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a vegan, but I'm always fascinated by people who can be very high performance and not eat animal protein.
I break the first rule of veganism, which is
you didn't introduce yourself as a vegan.
We are 37 minutes into this.
We're just now finding this out because we had to fucking ask. This is against the rules of veganism.
Now you're going to tell me you're a single speeder and you go to CrossFit too.
Oh, right. And I run marathons and all of that. Yeah.
It's supposed to be on your name tag.
I know,
am Dylan and I'm a vegan.
Right? I know, right? Yeah, there's some people who've watched my channel for years and they don't know that.
That's incredible.
How long have you been a vegan? Because I'm intrigued by this too, obviously from the food intake perspective.
Yeah. So I went vegan my senior year of college, and I'm 29 now. So I guess senior year of college, what are you, 22 years old?
Ish, yeah.
Yeah.
So about 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And was there a learning curve there? Or how close to vegan were you before you decided to step into veganism?
Yeah, I was never vegetarian. I went straight from eating meat to vegan, although I think my diet's always been pretty healthy.
Yeah.
I've eaten a lot of plants throughout my whole life.
Sure. Were you straight up like hardcore vegan? Do you not do honey?
I do honey. I guess there's different levels of veganism, right?
Yeah.
There's people that will, like, I don't know, not even eat with people who are eating meat, or there are people that'll like pour blood on people who walk out of Burlington Coat Factory or whatever.
That's judgy.
Yeah.
Right. So and then there's vegans who are, I don't know,
quiet about it,
more chill about it. I think that honestly, I don't want to go down like a whole discussion about veganism.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
I feel like vegans sometimes do themselves a disservice, and they have this reputation of being judgy and preachy, and I think that it actually turns a lot of people off from trying veganism, and just like with a lot of movements, there's a very extreme sect that kind of just gives everyone a bad name.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Dylan's going to get us canceled.
It was virtue signaling before virtue signaling was a thing. So I do a lot of yoga retreats where I have to cook for people with various allergies and concerns and stuff. And so it's always interesting to me. I just got back from Sedona cooking for 15 people, 11 meals in a row. And there was, the list of allergies and shit was difficult, to say the least, to navigate. And then it turned out all they wanted was red meat. And I was like, what are we doing here? You're gluten-free, dairy-free, you can't eat seafood, you'll die if you touch a scallop, but you want red meat. It was very interesting. So I'm just always curious with people, their dietary restraints, whether they're self-imposed or medical, or, whether they're philosophical, or if it's a dietary thing, or it's just curious to me.
I think for me, I originally started playing around with it because I wanted to improve my cycling performance. And I have one video where I talk about veganism and whether or not it improves cycling performance. The research is pretty limited, so I wasn't able to say a whole lot.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty debatable whether it does that or not.
Yeah.
I think that, you can have a very healthy diet that's not vegan that is probably optimal for
And you can eat
cycling.
junk food as a vegan and still be a vegan.
Exactly. I
you
mean,
know?
you could drink beer and eat French fries and technically be a vegan. So,
Yeah.
So I originally, it was originally to help with cycling performance, and then I kind of did more research on the health benefits, and I think that led me down a rabbit hole to some of the other benefits of veganism, and I just stuck with it. Like I said, I don't know. I didn't necessarily notice a difference in my cycling performance, but my diet was already pretty healthy as it was.
That makes sense.
But to continue to do that, is it because you just feel good both mentally and physically from it? If you recognize there may or may not be a cycling benefit from it, and you've been doing it for X amount of years, you continue to do it because...
Yeah. I think that probably a huge reason is the health benefits. I mean, I'm a young guy. I don't have any health issues whatsoever, but I would like it to stay that way if that's possible.
Yeah.
You know?
That's fair.
I guess it was probably 6 years I started experimenting with diet as... Not diet as in like I'm going on a diet, but lifestyle of my eating.
Getting ready for prison.
And I went vegan. I just wanted to, hey, let's try it and see what happens. And I immediately started feeling better. The inflammation I could tell was feeling good. Started dropping weight. I got to this point in my cycling where I had never been that fast before. And then, not too long after, I started dropping muscle. I started getting weaker, and I found myself I worked from home, so I was cooking all the goddamn time. I was constantly cooking, and I could not get in. I know people say this all the time, and then you may go, no, you totally can. I did not feel like I could get enough protein in. Like I never felt like I was able to repair. Then I went vegetarian, didn't feel right. Then I went fish and feathers and fowl, or feathers and fish only. Now I'm kind of going back to red meat, but I think it's just like it comes down to like, does it make your body feel right? Is it healthy? Because there are obviously diets where you eat animal protein and you can continue to stay healthy as long as you're not eating shit all the time, hamburgers, cheeseburgers, and these guys eat brisket all the goddamn time.
I do not.
Yeah, you do. Aren't you a big brisket boy?
I haven't had brisket in months.
Okay.
Well,
I'm
that's
just
not true.
Anytime I can get a knock into them is what I'm
That's not
getting
true.
at.
Shannon brought me some Terry Blacks the other day, and I had some of that.
And the last question on the diet, and then we can move on, but how do you get the optimal protein? I mean, I know you don't want to be a lot of muscle, but you still have to have that for muscle repair, fuel, things like that. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, there's the classics like beans, nuts,
lentils.
Lentils.
But don't you have to eat an absolute shitload of that?
Yeah, I
to
mean,
get to where
it's one of the benefits of being vegan. You get to eat more.
That's true.
You get to eat a bunch, right?
And I will say that I do supplement with protein too. So I'll take a protein powder.
Yeah.
The protein powder that I take, it doesn't have any added sugar or any added flavor, so it tastes like complete shit.
But where does it's not a whey protein?
It's pea protein.
Is
it
it's a mix of a lot of things. It's
Hemp.
like pea, hemp.
Yeah.
It's if you look at it's probably 20 different plants that they put in there, and which makes it a more complete source of protein as opposed to just getting it from one.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we'll get off the vegan thing because I know you said you didn't want to just turn this into a vegan podcast.
Yeah.
But I want to rewind real quick because you said something that stuck in my head, and I want to dive into it just a little bit before we move on to this beautiful machine back here. You said when ever since you were 14, you had it in your mind you wanted to be a pro. So what did cycling look like for you at 14? Where were you, and what was your discipline? And who?
How did you get into the sport?
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so my dad was a mountain biker, and I think at 12 years old he bought me a mountain bike and started taking me.
Do you remember what bike it was?
Yeah, it was a Jamis. I can't remember the model.
Yeah.
It was a hardtail
Dragon.
Jamis. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And he started taking me out. I started riding.
This was in North Carolina?
No, I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area.
Okay.
And so I started riding at that time. I think I did my first race at 14, and I mean, I fell in love with racing very quickly.
Yeah.
Like it was there. I came up in the junior ranks, and you'll see there are some kids that it's clear that their parents are pushing them to do this.
Yeah.
That was not me.
Right.
I was pushing my parents to take me to bike races.
Yeah.
And
I think that's the healthiest way.
Yeah, I mean, it was I was intrinsically motivated to be fast on the bike. Like, it was, in fact, if anything, I think my parents didn't understand why I was riding my bike for 5 hours. They're like, that's too much time riding your bike.
Yeah.
Not that they weren't supportive. They were very supportive, but I think in the early days, they almost thought I was overdoing it. Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that a great feeling, though, when you're a kid and you get into something and it just completely envelops your life, and all you want to do is absorb as much information? And I wasn't cycling at 14. I was into other things, but what's that?
Oh, no.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that a whisper?
Masturbation?
No, I wasn't. I don't do that. You really... I'm trying to rethink what my...
So what does a cycling block look like for you these days? Like ramping up for the season, or even just maintaining fitness?
Or Unbound. I want to hear about the Unbound.
Are you like a 16-hour a week guy?
16 hours? What is that, a recovery week?
Oh, my God.
30 hours?
Should we talk about the Unbound block?
Yeah.
You want to talk about some crazy training?
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe, honestly, the Unbound block might be the reason why I'm sick right now. Maybe my immune system got so fucked after that.
That and being a vegan.
Yeah, exactly. Not enough protein.
Not enough protein.
Exactly.
So what does the Unbound block look like? I can't wait.
Yeah, so I just posted about this. I think it's pretty funny. I feel like all the Lifetime Grand Prix riders post about their Unbound block, and I made a little joke about how, if you don't post about your
Unbound... I saw that. That was great, yeah.
Unbound block on Instagram, did it even happen?
Right.
Let's give them a second here.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, actually... So did you post that, or did Backwards Hat Dylan post that?
I don't know.
Where is that line? I'm very fascinated by that.
Yeah, it probably depends on the day who's in charge of the account.
Okay. It's the firehouse. Boom. All right, Unbound block.
Yeah. So last year, my Unbound block was. It was a 2-week block right before Gravel Locos, just like this, and I did a 28-hour week the first week, and then the second week I did 34 hours. And I will say that, after that block, I think I was the fittest that I've ever been in my life. Gravel Locos went well, Unbound went well, and then the last race of that 3-week block was BWR North Carolina. That went really well. Felt super fit, numbers were amazing. I was recovering at the speed of light, and I was like, if it worked so well last year, I got to try to double down on it this year, and I did even more this year. I did, again, another 2-week block, 34 hours in the first week, 40 hours in the second week.
Oh, man.
So
Caleb doesn't even work that much.
No, I don't even know how to do that.
All right. You're a low and slow guy. Generally speaking, right?
I was just about to ask, are you in this whole Zone 2 camp?
I do a lot of Zone 2, yeah.
Okay.
So most of that week was Zone 2. There were 4 tempo workouts in there, so nothing crazy, not a lot of high intensity. The focus of the block was the volume.
Yeah.
Falling into 80-20 or?
That week was probably more 90-10.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say, the Zone 2 thing is just now showing up on my radar, like maybe in the last... 8 months to a year. How long has that thought process been around or been like top tier?
Yeah, so it's funny. I feel like Zone 2 is getting mainstream. It's not just cyclists.
It really is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you may have had something to do with that.
I don't. I think I talk mostly. My audience is mostly cyclists.
Yeah.
Maybe triathletes, maybe runners, but now you're getting like what is his name? Andrew Huberman and what's the other podcast that talks about Zone 2 training that's not talking?
Yeah, but where did they get it from? Huh?
Yeah. So Zone 2 training is kind of blowing up, and I think it's a good thing. The research on Zone 2 training has probably been out for more than 10 years, maybe 15 years at this point.
Yeah.
But obviously, it takes a little while for something to come out in research before it comes mainstream. It's not like research is going to come out and then a month later it's mainstream.
Right.
It takes a little while.
Yeah.
So, I think that probably polarized / pyramidal training / zone 2 training has really kind of taken its foothold in endurance sports. I would say within the last 5 years.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, wait a minute. What the fuck were you doing in Winona, Texas?
I don't know. What was I doing there?
Do you just stop on your drives and start riding?
Yeah.
That's like maybe, I don't know, 12, 15 miles from where I grew up as a child in East
really?
Texas. Yeah, and I'm looking at your rides, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm 271. Why is he at 271? And I can almost, like, I scroll over the map, and literally that's the town I grew up in, and that's...
Yeah. That would have been a complete coincidence because I think I was just driving and I wanted to stop to do a quick ride.
So
It was time to stop driving.
So when you're traveling, you'll just stop and just hop on.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
How
I love
do you
that.
route find when you do that?
I don't route find. I just stop my car and I start riding.
Oh, okay.
Well, props to you for
I like
riding
that.
in that area. It is not the people there are good, but it's not the.
Yeah.
There's no cycling infrastructure
Yeah.
in Winona, Texas.
I was on some pretty quiet roads, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Like, there wasn't a lot of traffic. It was fine.
Yeah, well, just lack of shoulders and stuff
Yeah.
like that in that
Yeah.
area. But good for you. That's a great area. I love.
So
that's
you're
a
doing
pretty
your
area.
heat acclimation thing in Texas through when do you leave Texas and head towards Emporia or wherever else you're going?
Yeah, I think that I'll probably be in Texas until a week before Unbound, and then I'll head up to Kansas and I'll pre-ride some of the course.
So do you have routes already scheduled out that you're going to do, places you're going to be, or are you just throwing it off the cuff to see how things work?
I think you guys would be surprised how much I'm not a planner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I wouldn't be.
Like it may seem like I plan things out very meticulously, and some things I plan out, but planning routes, no, definitely not. So if you guys have route recommendations, I'm all ears.
If you're saying up this way, I got a gazillion routes for
Yeah,
you. You
that's
tell me
this
what
guy.
you want, we'll get you lined up. But and I got stuff all over the state.
This guy has routes like I have recipes.
But
Awesome.
yeah, you're welcome to any of them. So if you need anything, we'll point you that direction. Is that the only bike you have with you this time?
I've got 3 bikes with me actually, but that's the one that we should probably talk about for sure.
That is one
I
sexy
think it
bitch.
is. First off, brand and model, and I assume it's a 2024.
Yeah.
Sick graphics too.
Yeah.
That's so sexy.
Yeah, it's the felt breed carbon size 54 frame, custom painted in the Felt United team colors. Unfortunately, a lot of people have asked me, but unfortunately, I don't think that you can buy this paint job as of yet. Maybe we can convince Felt to make that an option.
It's definitely sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when this bike came out. Someone said, "You got to see this." I ride a Cutthroat. It's also Cutthroat, which is less race geometry, but very, very close in this bike. And I came very, very close to ordering this, but they announced it, and then we contacted them. It's like, well, we don't know when they're going to be ready. This is a year and a half, 2 years ago. But I am a massive. These guys will know. I go on and on about it. I love underbiking. I have a single speed mountain bike that I don't ride extremely often. Most of the trails here, I'm on my Cutthroat on 29 tires. So this is in my wheelhouse. I love the fact that you're doing it in these big gravel races. But do you take this on trails?
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah, for sure. Where I live in Brevard, the trails in Pisgah are quite technical.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if I'm actually doing a mountain bike ride,
Okay.
I usually ride my mountain bike
Yeah.
because I wouldn't want to take any sort of drop bar bike on most of the mountain bike trails in Brevard. But that doesn't mean I don't hit trails on this occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And what size tires are currently on this
All right,
beautiful
yeah.
beast?
No, we have to talk about the tires for sure.
Yeah.
So this is basically the Unbound setup right here. And these are Conti Race King 2.2s, black chili compound. It's an extremely low rolling resistance tire, but at the same time, I'm very confident that it's not going to puncture at Unbound. I mean, I use this tire for mountain bike racing, and I don't get punctures very frequently. So
Yeah. No liners.
I don't have liners.
Yeah.
I would have liners in if I was doing a regular gravel tire for Unbound, but with this kind of volume, I don't feel like it's necessary.
That's fair.
Yeah.
And is it, you're going to race it just like it sits, or are you going aero bars?
Well,
He can't.
Can't do aero bars.
Yeah, I would go Aero.
Oh.
Pros can't on Lifetime races.
Oh, I guess I didn't get the memo. I need to check my email. They didn't send me that.
You better take them off before you head down there.
Yeah, no, that was a big controversy.
Yeah.
I would totally do aero bars. In
Yeah.
fact, I was big on aero bars back when they were allowed, but no
Yeah.
aero bars anymore.
When did that change?
This
missed-
is year 2.
Yeah.
Last year
Okay.
was the first year, and I want to say the announcement came fairly close, wasn't it?
Yeah, I literally
time?
missed that.
I think it was pretty obvious it was
Yeah.
coming, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we were all ready for it because the year before there was
A lot of controversy.
so much controversy around it.
But it was more just shit talking, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
well, yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
It was
But-
people that weren't running aero bars jealous of the people that were brave enough to run aero bars. That's
Oh, yeah.
was my hot take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there was a lot of shit talking. There was a lot of pot stirring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of what I call contrived versy, but that's
Nice.
Well, and the reason I asked that is your positioning on the bike. You know, your seat is slammed all the way forward. You're running what size stem is that again?
It's a 140 mil stem.
140. So it looks like you're in the attack position. It looks like you're perfectly set up to be on a set of fast sticks.
Yeah. Well, I guess you could say that I'm trying to get the most aerodynamic position possible without having aero bars. I've
Yeah.
got at the hoods, those NV bars that I have on the bike are 35 centimeters in width.
Wow.
It's insanity. But you're a narrow guy too. For,
I guess
for the
so.
listeners.
he's not
Yeah.
that narrow.
Yeah, but
I guess. Yeah.
we're,
I mean,
we're getting into marginal gains territory here,
Yeah.
aren't we?
Is it that he's that narrow or we're that wide?
a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, but now back to the stem though. This is a
Yeah.
long dong
I'm
stem
gonna
here.
stand up so I can see it.
Yeah.
I didn't even
I'm
know-
low anyway.
What brand stem is that to begin with?
yeah, it's the NV Aero stem. It's slammed, got no spacers, and it's also you can adjust the angle of the stem.
Is there a drop in that?
Yeah, it's a negative 17.
17.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, hell, your bars have like 4 inches of clearance over the tire.
yeah. Pretty impressive.
I've seen the video. There was a aerodynamics video that just happened to have you in the background, so I know you spend a lot of time in the wind tunnel and stuff. Where do you draw the line between bike fit and being comfortable because that, I mean, looking at where the seat is, thinking about your foot position over your hips and things like that, like are your knees, when you're in your downstroke or in the middle of the stroke, like are your feet way behind your knees?
Yeah, so let's talk about the saddle position because I do get a lot of questions about the saddle position.
It's not the norm.
And,
Yeah.
and go from saddle to cleat position to
Sure.
crank length as
Sure,
well.
yeah. No, we can talk about all of it. So with the saddle position, honestly, it looks like I'm trying to do something really aggressive and really outside the box, but honestly, that's just where my saddle needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
I put my saddle slammed forward on every bike I've ever had for the last 10 years, and I've even gotten a bike fit, and I told the fitter, I was like, this is what I do with my saddle. I don't know if it's correct, but let's see. And the fitter was like, yeah, no, your saddle needs to be really far forward.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily me trying to be more aero or trying to do some sneaky thing with my fit. That's just kind of where my saddle needs to be.
Particularly with a 140 millimeter stem.
Yeah. That's part of it.
Right. Yeah. So, as far as comfort versus aerodynamics, I actually don't find that position to be that uncomfortable. Obviously, it depends on the person. Maybe it's just because I spend so much time in that position.
I was about to say, you do 40 hours, you're going to get used to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't find that position to be that uncomfortable, but obviously comfort is really important for a race like Unbound. I mean, you can't ride in a ridiculously uncomfortable position for 10 to 15 hours.
Yeah.
So you definitely have to take that into consideration for sure. If we want to talk about cleat position, my cleat position is completely what you would expect it to be. Nothing weird there. It's
No,
just
because
on-
I expect it to be completely slammed,
What-
but I'm guessing they're not.
What are your pedals and shoes?
So I either run road pedals or mountain bike pedals. I prefer to run road pedals, Shimano road pedals
For
with
aero.
Well, aero, lightweight, stiffness.
Yeah.
I would say aero is probably the biggest one. Yeah. And I've really been digging the Specialized Aries shoe, which is I guess their sprinter shoe, and I'm not a sprinter, but I just find it super comfortable.
Yeah. And a stiff sole.
It's probably the most comfortable.
If you were a sprinter, you would have won Mid-South. You realize that, don't you?
Right. Right, exactly. I had that shoe on. I had no excuse. Yeah, I just find that to be a super comfortable shoe. It's probably the most comfortable shoe I've ever ridden. And my cleat is exactly where you expected it to be. It's not.
You're still not telling me, where is your cleat?
I mean, it's on the ball of my foot where most people put their cleat. I don't slam it forward or backward or anything crazy. I do run short cranks, so I run 165 millimeter cranks.
That's what the other thing I wanted to know.
And how tall are you?
5'10".
Okay.
Yeah, 5'10". So traditionally, somebody who's 5'10", that's a pretty average height for a male.
Mm-hmm.
They'd probably be on 172.5 cranks, and I was on 172.5 cranks. But the main reason that I switched to 165s is because if you're doing a smaller pedal circle, then your knee doesn't have to go through quite as large a range of motion, and it can help with knee pain. And I don't regularly get knee pain, but if I'm doing some insane training block like the one that I just did, sometimes knee pain can creep up on me. And I will say that I just finished this Unbound training block with, the most ridiculous volume I've ever done, and I didn't get any knee pain whatsoever. So
that's good.
I'm probably going to stick with it.
I've not heard that aspect, but that seems to be the trend. Shorter cranks across the board. A
lot of people are doing it for aerodynamics too, because you can get more in a more hunched over position because it actually opens up your hip angle.
Have you done any of your science shit on the shorter cranks yet?
I have a video about crank length, but it was specifically about whether the length of your cranks affects your power output, and from the research it seems like it doesn't have an effect on your power output. So you should choose the length cranks that is the most comfortable for you and not necessarily worry about which one is giving you a better power output.
Okay. And what saddle is that?
It's the Specialized, I think, what is it, tube? The 3D printed version.
Okay. Well, just across the board question, I think I know the answer, but I just want to make sure of it. Aside from the frame set, is everything else? Did you build the bike, or is the group Felt Breed off the shelf, or is any of this off?
This is not off the shelf whatsoever. This is like you cannot buy this bike.
I assumed as much. This is a podcast film.
Right.
This is not a YouTube video.
Sure.
So, all right.
Let's. I guess we can break down what the build of this bike is. Especially, people are listening to this, so they can't see it. So probably the next most eye-catching thing of the bike is the wheels. You don't usually see wheels that deep on a gravel bike. Those are 60 millimeter deep Reynolds Black Label wheels, and they have a 21 millimeter internal rim width, which is kind of on the narrow side for gravel. But if you remember 10 years ago, 21 millimeter internal rim width was like a standard mountain bike rim width. Yeah. It does work. Some people have asked me, can you even fit tires that wide on a 21 millimeter internal rim? And I go back 10 years. That's what we were all doing on mountain bikes.
Yeah, but with current technology, it seems like most people are running wider tires or wider rims because they're trying to hide the tire from an aerodynamic standpoint.
Yeah.
Like running that deep of a dish and then still having it come down to that narrow, running a 2.2. Seems like you're kind of fighting against the system there.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. So I will say that the external rim...
Now you're into his wheelhouse.
So the external rim width on these wheels is actually, it bows out to, the widest point is 36 millimeters, which is actually impressively wide.
Yeah, it is.
So it's not 36 millimeters right where the tire meets the rim.
Right.
The rim shape kind of has a bow shape to it, and the widest point is 36 millimeters. But we actually tested this in the wind tunnel. I don't know when my wind tunnel video is going to come out. It probably already should have come out, but I've been so busy with racing and training. But I'll talk about it. I don't run stuff on the bike that's not faster. So what I will say about the wheels and tire combo is that I'm running that because we've done some testing, and I think that's the fastest setup.
You did the math.
Yeah. So it was actually very surprising to us because I think that there's kind of this idea that if the tire is wide enough, then the aerodynamics of the rim doesn't matter because the air isn't even hitting the rim. So if you've got a mountain bike tire on a 21 millimeter internal with road wheel, that Aero road wheel is doing nothing for you. We actually found the opposite. It's definitely doing something.
Yeah.
If it's incredibly windy at Unbound, a lot of crosswinds, I'll probably go for a shallower wheel just because wheels that are that deep in crosswinds can get quite sketchy.
We know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're riding into like a head cross, it can actually kind of pull you a little bit.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So are you going bladed spokes too? I didn't look.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Bladed spokes. So those are the wheels. Quite a bit deeper than what most people are running for gravel. I think probably the next most eye-catching thing is the fork, which is the Lauf. I think what do they call it? The Grit SL.
I believe
something
so.
like that.
I believe so.
It's the newer generation version, not the older generation version.
Okay. Yeah. I forgot about this part.
Yeah. So again, what I'll say about this is we tested it in the wind tunnel. I don't run things that are slower. I run things that are faster. So that's what I'll say about that. And it's another really shocking result that I will talk about more in a video. But I think there's multiple reasons why that fork is faster. One of them is surprisingly aerodynamics. I won't get too much into it. I actually want to have Josh Portner from Silka give his thoughts on why that is.
What a knowledgeable guy.
Yeah.
Man.
Josh is a treat to watch his stuff too and listen to his stuff. So both of you guys just make my nerd stuff wiggle.
But I've actually really come to like the suspension aspect of it too, and I think for really bumpy courses, having that little bit of suspension it may actually be faster as well.
So when you refer to it being surprisingly aerodynamic, it's aerodynamic for a fork, not aerodynamic for a suspension fork. You like it aerodynamic just regardless of its suspension. The suspension is just a icing on the cake.
He said he wasn't ready to talk about it.
You're gonna
I'm gonna pick and prod, and I'm gonna make him tell me to quit asking questions about it.
No, you're gonna make me spit it out here. So I'll just spit it out.
Nobody listens to this shit anyway.
We have like 3 listeners, so don't even worry.
We tested this fork versus the stock felt breed fork, and it was the Lauf fork was faster than the stock felt breed fork.
Wow.
Aerodynamically, just in the wind tunnel.
What do you attribute that to? Because it's got all that trailing
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. So it's pretty surprising, and I think most people, when they hear that, they're like, yeah, your wind tunnel was miscalibrated or something. I think that so first of all, the fork is actually not a terrible aero shape. They actually did think about the aerodynamics of the fork.
Benedict and those guys put some work into that.
Yeah, and I think that you're seeing some companies go the route of wider forks recently on their aero bikes, and I think that there could be multiple reasons for that. One of them could be the fact that if the fork is interrupting the airflow before it hits your leg, it actually makes your leg more aerodynamic. And then also I think that if there's enough separation from the fork and the tire, then you're not having an interference with the air from the tire hitting the air that's coming in from the fork.
That makes sense. That does make sense, yeah. I've also noticed a growing trend of the seat stays getting wider on especially time trial bikes and stuff too.
Yeah.
Where they're actually coming out like shoulders and dropping down, so they're not tapering at all. They're just straight shots.
Yeah.
So, and that's strictly from an aerodynamic standpoint as well.
Yeah, if you've seen those Lotus track bikes, so those Lotus track bikes are pretty crazy looking. The fork is super wide, and the seat stays are super wide, and they're supposed to be in line with the rider's leg. And again, that's to trip the airflow before it hits the rider's leg, because the rider's leg is way less aerodynamic than anything going on with the bike.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That in your chest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the rider makes up 80+% of the aero drag of the system. So.
How much clearance do you have on that bike with those 2.25s?
Yeah, so these are 2.2 tires. With these rims, they measure 53 millimeters. Felt claims that the max tire clearance on this bike is 50 millimeters, which always means you can bump it up wider than that.
Bump it.
53 millimeter tires. I'm not having any sort of rubbing whatsoever. So they fit well. If it's a muddy year, I'll probably switch to a narrower tire just for mud clearance. But if it's dry, this is what I plan on running.
Okay. Has that seen any mud yet? With the 2.2?
Yeah, let me think. Yeah, probably. I mean, where I live in North Carolina, we don't get the sticky mud that you get at Unbound. So the mud that we get sheds really easily, and it's not going to stick to your bike, and you don't need to bring a paint stick. I mean, I've certainly ridden in mud. I haven't ridden in Unbound type mud yet.
Okay. And what group set are you running on that?
So I'm running a GRX 11-speed group set.
What bottom bracket and cranks does he need, Caleb?
Fuck, man. We'll save that story for a minute. In a minute, we'll tell you about that.
Yeah.
No, his is a gravel bike, so he doesn't need a mountain bike bottom bracket.
Yeah.
A different animal.
We got some stories.
Yeah.
So it's not. I will say though that the group set's not stock. There's some changes to it. Just some marginal gain changes. Probably the one that you can see right off the bat here: ceramic speed oversized pulley wheels.
Mm-hmm.
I also do wax chains, Silco wax chain.
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah, and then
He's got a crock pot.
oh yeah, and then I do pretty big chain rings too, 52, 36. That's not necessarily because I feel like I'm spinning out with a smaller gear, but I'm actually trying to do a bigger chain ring so that the chain has to articulate less when it goes around the chain ring. And you can run, for Unbound speeds, you can run more in the middle of the cassette as opposed to running more on the harder gears of the cassette. Like for example, the 11 tooth. Not only are you cross chaining a little bit, but the smaller that cog is, the more the chain has to articulate.
Yeah.
Ceramic speed bottom bracket, ceramic speed bearings in the wheels. So full ceramic speed going on there.
Since we were talking about gearing and chainring and stuff, what is the consensus of the pro group with Unbound going north this year and a little bit more climbing, a little bit more rugged roads? Is that even you guys even talking about it? No one cares, or is it just? Are you putting? I mean, you seem to be like someone who puts a lot of thought into things. Or
he told you he doesn't plan routes.
No, that's true too.
He's not a route studier.
Yeah, that's true.
No, so North Route is definitely going to be a slightly slower average speed, although with how the trend for gravel, the competition at Unbound and gravel in general, I'd be surprised if it's that much slower. It's probably not going to be slower at all. But it's definitely rougher terrain, probably more climbing. This is the same gearing that I ran last year, though. I'm not changing the gearing. I don't think that the route is different enough to elicit a change in gearing.
What's the cassette? I didn't.
The cassette is an 11 to 34 tooth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
GRX brakes too?
GRX brakes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything special in the levers or hoods or anything like that?
No, not necessarily. We got one nice thing about this bike for a race like Unbound is you can fit 4 bottle cages on it. You can fit 3 bottle cages in the frame, and you can fit 1 bottle cage under the down tube. The bottle that I put there, I don't know if I'm even going to drink out of it. I might just pour that on myself to cool myself off.
Yeah, because it'll be covered in cow shit.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it is nice to have that option, and I've got the Silca tie cages, and they do this awesome unicorn colorway that kind of matches the bike really well.
Yeah, I'm loving
finishes
that.
It off. Yeah.
So my level of curiosity now is, after talking about all the aero aspects and stuff, why aren't your cables routed internally?
You've been waiting for that, haven't you?
Oh man, when I posted about this bike at first, I think that post has 400 comments, and 200 of them are talking about the cables.
Oh, okay.
People were very upset about the cables.
I'm not upset. I'm just curious.
Yeah. So I mean, the last bike sponsor I had was Factor, and Factor does have internally routed cables, and also the Factor bike just looks very aero because they essentially took their aero road bike and made it into a gravel bike with wider tire clearance, whereas Felt kind of made a gravel specific bike here. They didn't just take their road bike and make a gravel bike out of it. As far as the cables go, I mean, I would prefer internally routing, but I actually think it may not be the most aesthetically pleasing, but I actually do think that they thought about the cable routing from an aero perspective, because if you look at the cables, most of the unlike with most bikes that have externally routed cables where they just bow out in front of the head tube, these cables are actually tucked behind the bar, and most of the cable is hidden behind the handlebar.
Okay, yeah.
So
It makes sense.
yeah, I would prefer internally routed, but if you're gonna go externally routed, I don't think this is a terrible option.
Yeah, I was looking more specifically at the fork. Like, I mean, you know, because the cable actually comes from the side over to the front of the fork and then down the inside of the leg of the fork.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking, you know, I mean, you could easily just drill a hole in the side of that fork and run it through your headset, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you definitely could definitely start drilling holes in the thing, but I don't know.
That's probably. I mean, I think it's smart to drill holes in carbon right before a major pro race.
It'll
I don't
make it
know. Let's see what
lighter.
happens.
Yeah, right.
Fuck around and find out.
That was not advice, by the way. I am not a professional by any means. I was just curious because it seems like kind of a juxtaposition, you know. Super aero, study everything. Where do you do your wind tunnel testings, by the way?
Yeah, we did it at the ARC wind tunnel in Indianapolis, and Silka is the one that helps me out with that. I've been to the wind tunnel in ARC for the last 2 years, and both times we've gone, we've found some very surprising findings, very interesting findings, stuff that this is what I'll say about aerodynamics is it's not intuitive.
Yeah.
There every time we go, there's stuff that shocks us.
Yeah.
And it a lot of times it's the opposite of what you would think. Like the big thing we found last year was that a hydration pack, specifically the USWE pack, was actually more aerodynamic on my body than not having it.
Wow.
I will say this: Matt Stevens told us that 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
And you remember who I can't remember who the guy was that came over and was winning the race and couldn't stay on course from Shreveport. But
Russ
Walker.
Russ Walker.
Remember, he wore that crazy hydration pack under his jersey. It looked like a turtleback, and he claimed Aero
But
all that stuff.
you guys got the math figured on the USWE specifically, correct?
So I used to work in bike shops back when I was a much younger guy, and I used to work with John Cobb, who did a lot of wind tunnel testing. He used to work in conjunction with Steve Head, and they'd go down to A&M. Head wheels were one of the first like deep dish wheels, but that's back when everything was rim brake, and they'd go down and test these ridiculous wheels. And I just remember Cobb talking about, you know, all the findings they had there. And they did, like, this was before your time, but Peekaboo Street, who was a downhill skier, they did fairings for her legs for downhill speeds and stuff, and it was just amazing to me. So I was just curious. So I'm very intrigued with the aerodynamic aspect. But
So when you do your wind tunnel stuff, is that something you have to book months in advance, or how does that? Can the average Joe just hop in the wind tunnel?
You know, I'm not the one who books it. Silka books it, but we do book. I think 2 months in advance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not cheap. I don't know what the price is because I don't book it, but it's not cheap for sure.
it's probably an hourly rate and like a setup fee, and because everything's specific. I mean, if you're going to do cycling, you got to have one specific setup. And
that wind tunnel that we use is mostly for cars, but you can obviously...
it seemed very large.
Yeah. You can obviously test bikes in there, but it's mostly race cars that go there.
Yeah. I would imagine with its location.
Yep.
Yeah.
When you're out there and you're, mile 140 and you're obviously can feel it, do you find yourself falling out of position and going, oh, no, and straightening up and trying to, like, at some point it gets...
I'm so un-aero right now.
Yeah, do you ever give yourself a break and realize, I know I'm not being aero, I know this is not what's in the game plan, but how uncomfortable at times can those positions be?
Yeah, it can be very hard to hold an aero position for 10 hours. And certainly at a certain point you find yourself falling out of position. I feel like I try to consciously stay in the position more than some of my competitors. Like some of my competitors, I just feel like they're straight up in the hoods at all times.
Yeah.
I try to not be that person. I try to stay in that position. Also, you can't see it from here, but on the tops of my bars, I do put a little bit of I don't know if you would call it grip tape, because it's not grip tape.
It's like a rubberized padding.
It's a rubberized padding.
Yeah.
And that actually makes the puppy paws position pretty doable as well.
We'll talk about that. I got an idea for that, by the way.
All right.
I've been tooling around with an idea on that.
Caleb's
but you guys
an idea man.
I'm an idea guy.
Yeah.
You can do puppy balls? I thought that they
you're-
were That's UCI then. Never
That's
mind.
the UCI. No,
Okay.
Lifetime you're allowed to do puppy paws, but you're not allowed to do aero bars. So
Yeah.
they took away one thing that's unsafe
Yeah.
to make it less safe in the other direction.
I
It's a whole thing.
think that I do both. If I have my aero
Heard
bars
that
on them
about
and that, yeah. Well, shut up, Brad. Puppy paws are definitely more dangerous.
Oh yeah. That's what I mean. They took away aero bars for safety, and then people are doing puppy paws, which is actually less safe. So
Yeah.
And unless you have currently I have the new WTB super cushy bar wrap. Just put it on. I mean, it is so damn thick. And then I went in the puppy paws the other day, and my arms just slipped right forward. Like it, even though they're grippy when you have gloves on, as soon as they get wet. So a lot of people don't even realize, unless you have the proper bar tape that's going to hold you, like what you said, you have probably that 3M rubber tape on there.
So I noticed the back of your hands are tan. Speaking of gloves, you don't wear gloves, do you?
Depends on what I'm doing. Mountain biking, I usually wear gloves. Road riding, I usually don't wear gloves.
What about gravel?
Yeah, depends on how rough it's going to be. If it's really hot too, I've kind of been not wearing gloves because I try to actually minimize the amount of fabric on my hands.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of you do get a lot of heat loss from your hands.
Yeah.
So if you got nothing on there, theoretically maybe you cool yourself better.
Yeah.
So-
I feel like that's a very under-discussed topic, though, because there's totally two different camps when it comes to gloves, no gloves, you know. I mean, in regular weather conditions, obviously, when it gets cold, it's a no-brainer. But
Have you done any of your aero testing on gloves?
We haven't done any aero testing on gloves, no.
Okay, so we've got the fork, we've got the U-Swi, we've got the socks.
Yeah, so I mean, I will say that my kit sponsor is Rule 28, and they do aero socks, aero gloves, aero skin suit.
so you're going to be wearing a skin suit?
Yeah, I'll be wearing a skin suit. I mean, maybe if it's insanely hot, I'll do
What about the helmet?
A summer jersey.
Are you going to wear the helmet?
What do you mean the helmet?
That big, ridiculous helmet?
There's no rules against
the
it.
Giro TT helmet.
Yes.
Darth helmet.
Yeah, so I think that heat management is probably so important for Unbound that you would actually end up going slower as a result of wearing a TT helmet, especially a ridiculous TT helmet like that.
But if heat wasn't a factor, would you be above wearing that helmet?
Oh man.
Oh, that's a good question.
Because I mean, come on, every person that's ever worn a helmet before, the first time you saw that helmet, you went, "What the fuck is going on
That's
here?"
true. You know, I feel like give it enough time and that helmet will just look normal.
Yeah.
Like when that POC helmet first came out, everybody was saying the same thing. They were like, that helmet
Now they're
looks
everywhere.
absolutely ridiculous. And now I feel like that helmet doesn't even look that bad.
Yeah.
It's just all what you're used to.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true. God, but still. I saw this clip of this chick riding the other day, and she had this pair of sunglasses that was a full face shield, and the caption was just, "Not today, bug."
Yeah.
What's next for you? Like, what's the next plan? Hedging on the bet that you're feeling better.
Yeah, so I'm going to really, as far as Gravel Locos goes, I'm just going to play it by ear with how I'm feeling. I mean, even if my throat is fine, being on antibiotics means I'm probably not going to have a great race.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm 50-50 on even doing Gravel Locos, and I'm just hoping I'll be off of antibiotics for 9 days before Unbound, and I'm just really hoping that by Unbound I'm feeling 100%.
Yeah. Even if you do it, at least is it a training ride then, maybe?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Unbound is the biggest race of the year for me.
Yeah.
So I'm hesitant to ever call Unbound a training.
Oh, no.
He meant Gravel Locos.
Oh, Gravel Locos.
Sorry.
Gravel Locos. Yeah. Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Do you have the self-discipline to get out there with everybody that's hot and bothered and wanting to get spicy at Gravel Locos and turn it into a training ride for yourself, or would you get caught up in the heat of the moment?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't typically line up for a bike race with the intention of doing a training ride. Usually if I'm on the starting line, I'm intending to do as well as I can. So I don't know. That's a little bit foreign to me. I'm gonna have to play it by ear.
Let me try this from a different perspective. So, and I apologize. Which race was it last year that you did and made the big deal and made the big video about pacing yourself?
Yeah. No, that was Leadville. So at Leadville, I guess that's what you're talking about, getting hot and bothered with the pace of what everybody else is doing versus riding your
Well,
own pace.
where you rode your pace and you proved yourself at the end, was it Leadville that?
It was Leadville, yeah.
Okay, so everybody rolled off the front, but you had, I'm gonna maintain this pace and do this consistent pace, and do X watts at the beginning and be doing the same watts at the end.
Right.
Basically, yes.
Yeah. No, that's exactly correct. So Leadville is a great race to do that at for I would say 99.999% of riders, and I include myself in that 99.99%. Maybe if you're like Keegan or Alexi, then you kind of want to do whatever the front group is doing. But I think the strategy of just following the front group does not work for almost everyone at Leadville. Like, you just need to ride at a pace that's sustainable for you, because people will be going too hard, and then because of the altitude and the distance, you're going to blow up catastrophically.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be able to come back from it. So basically at Leadville, I just rode at a pace that I knew was sustainable for the entire race, which of course meant on the first climb I was dropped instantly.
Was that all watt based?
It was, watt.
Yeah.
Watt and a little bit of heart rate too.
Yeah.
And so at the top of the first climb, I was probably, I don't know if I was even 50th place. It was pretty far back. And then by the end of the race, I made my way up to 17th place.
17th.
Yeah.
Who'd have thunk it?
That's awesome.
Consistent.
So speaking of heart rate, what does your heart rate do in a healthy environment? What do you anticipate your average heart rate to be at Unbound? The heat not being a factor. I mean, I know heat changes things.
Yeah, right. My average heart rate, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like high 140s, maybe 150.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a long race. I would say maybe it's probably going to, average heart rate for Unbound is probably going to be high 140s.
Yeah.
And my threshold heart rate is probably 170. Max heart rate is, 185-ish.
Yeah. Oh, to be young.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's not a realistic expectation for you to apply the Leadville approach to Unbound this year.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have applied the Leadville approach to Unbound back in 2022.
I thought you did.
I think it was 2022. I think it worked okay, and I think that if you had a really strong group of riders to do it with you, it would work really well. But at Unbound, drafting matters a lot, and that strategy works less well when drafting matters a lot.
Yeah, that's a pack tactic driven race.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to match, you got to mark, you got to.
Yeah. I mean, if the race was a solo time trial, absolutely, that's the fastest way from point A to point B. And I think that even if you had a group of really strong riders to commit to that strategy, I think it would also be the fastest.
That would be very interesting.
Yeah.
To see that
It'd be
play
cool
out.
to see like 6 to 8 guys work together,
rotating it,
Yeah.
and that would be really cool, actually.
Yeah.
But then again, everybody's pace is everybody's pace.
Yeah,
right.
There's that.
Yeah.
Well, you can convince somebody else. You can get Drew to go out there and overdo it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm going to rely on Brad and Kevin's memory here because they're way better at memorizing things.
7.
Interestingly, a couple of months ago, my wife and I were cleaning out the house, just getting rid of junk, spring cleaning kind of thing, and I found a Velo News magazine from exactly 5 years, like almost to the week. And in that, there were 3 riders that each wrote a column on where they think gravel is going to be in 5 years of that point, which was where we were that day. One guy was pretty far off, one guy was pretty close, and then one guy was really, really close. Where do you think, what's gravel going to be like in 5 years?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that it's probably, the trend that we've seen is that it's getting more serious, and sort of the spirit of gravel era is kind of slowly phasing out. Probably not phasing out for the...
You didn't even use air quotes when you said that.
If you don't use air quotes, it means like you're all in on the spirit.
Well, yeah, Dylan also killed the spirit of gravel.
Yeah.
I probably for the mid packers and everything, there's still a spirit of gravel, but at the pro level, there is no more spirit of gravel, in my opinion.
No, it's all blood.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's become like professional road racing, kind of.
Yeah.
And I would say that,
There's no kind of to it. This is the USA professional cycling.
And it's so conflicting, too, because it's a cool thing, but it's also a shitty thing.
That's why we're doing the privateer, dude.
Yeah, I know.
We can mix the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I know.
So this is a hot take of mine. I think that I think that gravel cycling in the U.S. is the most competitive discipline of cycling, even more competitive than domestic level road racing.
Yeah, wow.
I think that
In the U.S.
I'm not talking about Europe. Obviously,
I agree 1,000%.
Obviously, the World Tour is more competitive than U.S. gravel racing. I'm talking about if you're racing in the U.S.
Yep.
Exclusively,
Exclusively. Gravel is the most competitive discipline, and the riders that are at the top of gravel racing in the U.S. are stronger than the riders that are at the top of U.S. road racing.
Agreement.
Yeah.
Actually, that leads to a topic we touched on last week. But I want to. So your Bonk Bros buds, are y'all in the same age group?
Yeah,
30,
we're all
30 under.
Yeah, we're all no. Well, Adam is above 30. Tyler's above 30. Tyler, I don't know. I don't want to missay his age here, but he might be mid 30s. We're all mid 30s to mid 20s.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. A discussion point for us last week was what I called the U23 black hole. How basically after U23 cycling in the USA, we lose so much talent.
Mm-hmm.
It's traditionally been the issue over the years. People that are good riders, but not true pro level riders, world tour level riders, kind of get thrown to the wayside.
Yep.
After college, after U23. That's my belief anyway. But I see it as, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that 23 to 29, 30, 31? That's
peak.
That's the Grand Prix talent right now, right?
Yep.
Yeah, how old's Payson? Payson's what, 28, 29, right? Or is he early
he might
30s?
Be 30.
I think
he's 30.
I think Payson's a little older.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's turning into an old man of the scene. But anyway, am I wrong in that assumption? In that, from developing USA high-level cycling, that's the age group that it really needs to be focused in. But it's also a lot of the people that, up until the Grand Prix, were going away from competitive cycling, and so that because there was no way to make a living at it, there was no way to not even make a living, just pay for my travel, and so I can go race my bike.
Yeah.
Or is my perception wrong in that?
I think your perception is correct. I actually think that gravel racing is really good for professional cycling in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just another avenue that people who are kind of in that black hole that you're talking about to actually make it in the sport. Because it is very difficult for a U.S. rider, either in World Cup mountain biking or World Tour road racing, to go over to Europe and make it. And it's not because they don't have the talent, but it's just because they don't have the home continent advantage.
Or the support, or the infrastructure.
Exactly. But I mean, I'm just saying, road racing in Europe is different than road racing in the U.S. And if you're not used to it, you could have an FTP that's 30 watts higher than your competition.
Well, it's a good thing gravel racing in Europe is just like gravel racing in the United States, right?
Right. Yeah.
Hey, all these good questions, you never answered the one pressing question.
What was the pressing one?
What's the best sandwich?
Yeah, what sandwich do you want, man?
The sandwich. All right.
I can't let that go unanswered because I'm super curious.
I mean, the sandwich that I probably eat the most is just a PB&J.
Yeah.
So Old Faithful.
But talk to me, PB, J, which one?
Yeah, you got to get more specific than that.
I mean, what's the bread? What are we doing bread-wise?
I usually do whole wheat bread. I don't know if that's like a sin for
dude, this is your sandwich. This is your sandwich.
And then I always do the natural peanut butter, and by natural I mean like the one that you buy from the store where the only ingredient is peanuts.
Yeah.
Maybe salt.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Yeah.
No
palm oil. None of that.
No, none of that.
Yeah.
Especially not hydrogenated vegetable oil. It's definitely avoid that.
No PFAS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as the J goes, I don't know. I'm not super picky about that one.
Okay.
Strawberry's fine. Raspberry, yeah.
I think that's a missed opportunity to really get in there and find your true voice in J selection.
Yeah.
There's so many options out there.
It really is.
And for someone that does so much research and so much science, the fact that you're just like, J is J, I'm almost let down with this.
I don't know, man. Jelly's a lot more aerodynamic than jam.
You like it chunky?
Yeah, chunky's good. Chunky's good.
Are you a chunky peanut butter guy?
Yeah,
that's a whole other thing,
I like
really.
Chunky peanut butter, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Makes spreading it on soft wheat bread really difficult.
All right. I'm going to put these guys to sleep, but this is somewhere I got to go because
Bathroom, old man?
No. So I mean, I found your stuff literally years ago. I think it was one of your first videos you did while you were still with CTS, and definitely fascinated by your science-based approach. I like people that do the math and back up what their opinions are, and I think you do a fantastic job of that. I think Josh does a fantastic job of that as well. So I really dig the content along those lines. But then there's Backwards Hat Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
That's just sheer genius right there.
I did not know. I didn't get it at first. I thought, which is this real guy's personality? The first time
do you know?
Years ago.
I don't know.
Seriously,
He admitted he doesn't even know. He doesn't know who's driving the bus most of the time.
It was so good. I was like, oh, I like this science. What the wait, what? Is he making fun of the science guy, or is the science guy making fun of him? I don't know. So good.
I need to better understand your media creation process, because quite frankly, I'm going to make some assumptions here, and if I'm wrong, please do let me know. I don't see how that stuff can be written by somebody else. I'm assuming you have to be writing your own scripts. Is that fair?
Yeah, I don't have a team of writers. That's not my budget.
Okay. So do you have a comedy or a writing background outside of papers for school or anything like that? Do you have a performance background? Did you do theater stuff in addition to your mountain bike race?
I was not a theater kid. No.
So where does all that come from? I mean, there's some crazy genetics involved with that if you're just doing that off the cuff as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that if you go back, a lot of it was practice. If you go back and watch the really early videos, my delivery wasn't nearly as honed as it is now.
Well, no doubt. But
have you ever thought about showing up to a race or an event as Backward Hats Dylan? Or have you done that and we're not aware?
I'm guessing he does it half the time.
I mean, the thing with the Backwards Hat Dylan is that I think that if you know me in real life, I'm probably a mix of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily just Mr. Science. In fact, a lot of what Backwards Hat Dylan says and does is stuff that
it is your stuff
that I've done and said.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's stuff that we've all done and said.
Yeah.
Right? So I think maybe it's showing two sides to my own personality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's not junk filler humor. Like there's value in it. Like it's a part of the yin and the yang of the information.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just not taking yourself too seriously.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing. I think there's a lot of it's common for cyclists to take themselves too seriously, and it's a very type A sport. So
Yeah.
I think anytime we can remind ourselves that, hey, we're just riding bikes here. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end all be all.
Yeah.
Which sometimes in my videos, like, I come off very serious, and what I'm talking about is and I think it's just important to have that reminder and that kind of comedic relief. Like, hey, I know that this science guy looks real serious, but like we can also be lighthearted and laugh about all this too.
Yeah.
So obviously your content's kind of shifted over the past couple years. I'm assuming that's a direct byproduct of being a Grand Prix racer. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, we're hoping you're a Grand Prix racer for years and years to come. But if something were to happen and you weren't, would the content shift back more towards science-based, or is your audience telling you that more of the race report or on-the-scene type content or the personality type content is the way to go, or you don't know what that might look like?
Yeah, so the shift that you're talking about is in the past couple of years, I would say, at least during race season, almost all my videos are race report videos. And I like doing those videos. Those videos are a little less work because I don't have to do a ton of research. Although they've become a lot of work because there's a lot of editing and there's still a script to write.
And you do all the editing and everything too, or do you have somebody else that does that?
As of right now, I do all the editing.
Dude, where do you find time for this shit?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I should hire an editor at this point.
I think you should, but it's not going to be me, I can tell you that.
Yeah, although I will say that so a lot of my recent videos have been race report videos, and my audience does really like the race report videos, and they do really well. Depends on the size of the race. Like the Unbound video always crushes it. Leadville video usually crushes it. If it's a smaller race.
Sea Otter, obviously, too.
Sea Otter did well. Yeah.
Gigantic event.
Yeah, exactly. The Mid-South video did well.
Yeah.
So I think that But this winter I think I did 4 science-based videos over the winter, which isn't crazy. I mean, I used to do a video every week, and I'm way far off of that now. I'm probably doing a video once a month at this point. And then in race season, it's just kind of whenever I have a race, I talk about that race. But I did 4 science-based videos this winter, and they absolutely crushed.
So you do follow the numbers.
Yeah, I mean,
you've got to.
I think that, you know, it'd been a full season of racing since I'd done a science-based videos, and I think that my audience was just craving it again.
Mm-hmm.
And like I did.
Don't get me wrong. That's what's so cool. But I like your other stuff too. And usually, when a content provider shifts like that, it drives me batty. It's like, no, I want to see the science. Watch you for the science shit, but all your stuff's really good.
Yeah, those videos really crushed. I mean, I think I did 4 videos in a row that had over 200,000 views, which for me that's a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you talked about looking towards the future when you're not primarily race oriented, maybe shifting towards coaching. But is it? I mean, it's realistic to say that you could just be a content creator and focus on that. I'm assuming it's a fair assumption that the content creation feeds your ignition coaching business a pretty good bit. Yes? No? Maybe?
Absolutely. It's probably the number one feeder of the coaching business. So yeah, they all feed each other. I mean, my 3 sources of income would be racing, and that's mostly through sponsorship, coaching, which is mostly through ignition, and also I sell online training plans, and then it's the content creation. And you know, you get to a certain point on YouTube, and YouTube will actually pay you to make videos. So the money that I make from YouTube is not crazy, but it feeds everything else.
Yeah.
So I could totally, if I were to retire from the racing side, I could totally just focus on the content creation, and it would probably be more lucrative than if I went head first into coaching.
Yeah.
Just because the content creation feeds the coaching.
And are you exclusively on YouTube?
With the videos are exclusively on YouTube. I haven't broken out into TikTok or
Reels or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably should do this. It would probably be a smart business tactic, but I'm really not into the short form content.
I'm about to say everything you do is long form in one shake or another.
If you did it, it would just be to push people to.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So help me better understand the ignition coaching process. Is ignition coaching basically a network of coaches, or is this a Dylan methodology that other coaches are embracing, a mixture of both? Or if I'm looking for coaching services and I'm interested in what Dylan Johnson does do I just reach out to a generic ignition coach, or how does that work?
Yeah, if you reach out to Ignition, we'll match you with a coach that we think is a good match for you based off of what your goals are. So, for example, if you're training for Leadville, we would try to find a coach for you that has Leadville experience, or at least altitude experience, or 100-mile mountain bike experience, and also a coach that you'd have an interview with them, and hopefully you would jive well with them. We've got 20 coaches working for Ignition right now, and we put them through a training process. And part of that training process is stuff that I preach on my YouTube channel, like, for example, weightlifting and polarized training and zone 2 and all of that. But we don't necessarily say to the coaches, this is how you have to coach. I mean, if there's different methodology. Exactly.
I'll help you, Caleb.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm looking that up real quick.
There's, people have different ideas about coaching, and we're not necessarily saying you have to coach this way.
Right.
If somebody wants to coach slightly differently, that's fine. So,
but is it safe to say that the majority of your coaches are all on the same, in the same thought process as far as zone 2 and carb intake and
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Are most of your coaching clients focusing on coaches that are in their geographic area, or that doesn't matter in these days of technology and chat GPT and all that good stuff?
Yeah, some athletes do want a coach that's in their geographic area, and that's important for them, and nothing wrong with that. But I would say that most people are not getting a coach that's anywhere near them, and all the coaching is over the phone or online. Cycling is kind of a sport where, not that it's not helpful to have your coach in person. I mean, if you have your coach in person, maybe they could give you some pointers that you could only see if you were riding with that person in person. But most cycling coaching is done online, and you're just prescribing training plans.
And it's based on metrics.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Speaking of sandwiches, while you're in Grapevine, I'm trying to get Caleb, because Caleb came and picked me up. Take me to, there's one of the best sandwich shops around. It's called Weinberger's.
Oh, yeah?
And they are tremendous. I think they have like 100 different sandwiches. They probably even have a PB&J.
I bet they've got a top-notch PB&J. I just want to make sure that I haven't missed anything super important I wanted to talk about.
It's
you
been a
covered everything
pleasure.
On your list?
Pleasure talking to you.
No,
this has been
Thanks for
fantastic,
coming out.
Dylan. We appreciate it tremendously. Is there anything you want to plug or anything you want to talk about or anything we need to do?
Yeah, for people that don't know, how do they find
Yeah.
you on the socials and stuff?
All right.
you know?
Well, you guys have actually done an excellent job of plugging me throughout this podcast, so I really appreciate that. But yeah, as far as the socials go, my YouTube channel is just my name, Dylan Johnson. My Instagram is my name, Dylan Johnson, but the Johnson is spelled JAWNSON. Backwards Hat Dylan also has an Instagram account that I never post on.
So Backwards Hat Dylan.
Ignition Coach Co. is the coaching company. You can, if you're into podcasts, Bonk Bros is the podcast that we were talking about on this podcast.
And another episode just dropped, and I wasn't able to listen to it before this, but okay. I'll listen to it on the way home.
And I have one parting question that we're going to get beat up if we don't ask you. Do you own an e-bike?
Do I own an e-bike? No, I don't own an e-bike.
There you have it.
You've heard it first.
You heard it first.
Pro cyclists don't ride e-bikes.
And we have to bring up e-bike every episode. Wait a minute. Did you ride your e-bike yet?
I did not. We got Cross Timbers got like 1.5 inches of rain that evening when I was supposed to go on my first e-bike ride, and so I didn't. But maybe it was fortuitous.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Anything else, Caleb?
No, I'm good. Thanks, Dylan.
All right,
Yeah.
we're gonna.
I love the fact that you're in Texas too. This is awesome.
And
Go ride your bike.